we're going to do the open gloving task now. And remember, the open gloving task is the one where you're not wearing a gown, okay? So you're going to select your glove sizes in advance so you have them. You do want to have 2 pairs of gloves just in case something goes wrong. As far as how you can handle these gloves, now remember on the inside of this packaging everything is going to be sterile. So you can't at any point touch this until your hands are completely sterile. So there's 3 ways you can deal with this situation. 1, if I want to get my gloves opened before I start WHO hand hygiene, I can open the gloves in a sterile manner onto my draped surface. Now remember, the draped surface is your sterile surface. The undraped surface is your non-sterile surface. So at no point put these gloves onto your sterile surface in their outer packaging. Only the interior packaging can go on this sterile surface. So 1, you could open your gloves before you start your WHO hand hygiene technique onto your sterile surface. 2 other ways you could do this. You could go ahead with your WHO hand hygiene and get your examiner to open the gloves in a sterile manner onto your sterile surface, but you must explain fully to them exactly how you need them to open these gloves. The other thing that they could do is open them into the air for you to take them from them. Okay, I am going to open my gloves in a sterile manner without touching the inside sterile packaging onto my draped surface. Okay, so I'm opening it flat first and then I'm tilting it onto my draped surface. And I'm just getting rid of my outer packaging. Let's leave that there for a second and let's go on with our WHO hand hygiene. Now, the important thing about your WHO hand hygiene isn't the order you do the steps, but the fact that you do every single one of the steps. If you don't do every step, then you're not passing this task because that is a major part of this task. Okay, a major step is to carry out a full WHO hand hygiene technique. So, what does that consist of? So what am I going to do first? I'm going to squeeze a small amount, 5 mils into my hand. That's usually about 1 pump. Then I'm just going to rub my hands together in a circular fashion just to spread it across my hands at first. Then I'm going to open out my fingers and I'm going to do 3 full movements with my interlaced fingers palm to palm. Then I'm going to turn around my hand and do my right palm on top of my left palm. On top of my left back of my hand, interlace my fingers and move my fingers backwards and forth at least 3 times. I'm going to switch my hands and I'm going to do the same motion with my other hand. Okay, nice big movements, make it really obvious. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hands, I'm going to interlace my fingers, so basically cupping them like this, okay? And I'm going to move my hands backwards and forwards. This is doing the back of those fingers, okay? Then I'm going to need to do each of my thumbs. Now it's important that when you rub your thumb, you also rub this side portion of your hand. So I'm going to basically rub in a circular motion, taking in my thumb, but the side of my hand in the same movement, at least 3 times. I'm going to do my other thumb in a similar fashion. And then finally, I need to do the very tips of my fingers. So I'm going to bunch them together into a little duck. I'm going to place it into my palm and move them round in a rotary fashion 3 times. Create my other duck and then 3 times in the palm. Okay, now it's important that your hands do stay moist throughout. Mine went a little bit dry midway because I was doing the movements slowly. If you find that when you're doing your movements, habitually when you're practicing that your hands get quite dry, maybe give yourself an extra pump when you start, just so your hands are a little wetter. Next step is you have to wait for your hands to dry. Now, I haven't mentioned this in our previous videos yet, but try to talk throughout and just explain to your examiner what you're doing. So I'm standing here and I'm going to say to my examiner, I'm going to let my hands dry now. It seems silly, but you can go quickly through that motion. You can know your hands are dry, but unless the examiner knows that you know your hands are dry, we're not getting that message through. So just every step, just say what you're doing. You could have said it with your hand hygiene as well. You know, I'm doing this step, I'm doing that step. So at this stage, I have already opened my glove packet onto my sterile surface, the interior glove packet onto my sterile surface. However, I could choose at this stage to ask my examiner, if I hadn't done this right at the beginning before I started, I could ask my examiner to open the packet for me. They will say, how do you want me to do this? And you're going to be saying, in a sterile fashion, without touching the inside packet, glove packet, and then you're either going to say, on to the sterile surface, so the interior glove packet falls onto the sterile surface, or you might ask them to open it in the air for you. That's your choice. Lovely. So now I'm going to need to touch my packet to open it. Okay, so I'm just going to touch it without really touching too much of the packet. And then what I'm going to do, you've got these little flaps. I'm going to pop my fingers underneath the flaps. Okay, so what I did there was I sort of scooped and I just wiggled my fingers just to get this loose. You then take your packaging and you pull it out, okay? And if you do it in this manner, you're unlikely to have the flaps, the side flaps coming in on you, okay? If you need to, you can touch these sections, but try not to touch anything anywhere near the interior gloves. So how am I going to put on these gloves? So first step, I'm going to pick up my gloves, touching only the cuff, and I'm going to get my thumb of my non-dominant hand, so for me it's going to be my left hand, and I'm just going to pick it up by this cuff, the very edge of the cuff, popping my thumb onto the inside there. Then I'm going to take my dominant hand, my right hand, and just pop my hand into the glove in a smooth fashion. So there was the glove, I've opened up the glove, and I've popped my hand in. Now, the important thing at this stage is to make sure that you hook your thumb. Now, I am the possessor of the hitchhiker thumb. However, you can see that I'm holding my thumb straight here. You don't need to have a hitchhiker thumb in order to be able to do this. I've pulled my glove on quite a long way onto my hand. That's so I don't have flappy fingers getting in the way. I'm also going nowhere near my wrist in this motion. Okay, I can let go now. Okay, I've got my thumb hooked. I've got my first glove on. Now, a thing to remember when you are open gloving is fingers to fingers and cuffs to cuffs, okay? So, my cuff, always think of it as semi-sterile, and then think of the outside of the glove, so my fingers, as sterile, okay? What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to try to loosen the second cuff. Now, I haven't touched this glove at all yet, so I'm just turning this so you can see, I've wiggled my fingers to get this cuff to come up. Now, sometimes you'll have a cuff with a little band around it, and that does make it a little easier to get it loose, but you can just wiggle your fingers away to loosen it up. If you're struggling, you can also take your second hand and hold the inside of the packaging. You can even try wiggling it that sort of way, okay? Basically, always think that my semi-sterile hand can only touch the semi-sterile bits of the glove that are going to end up on the inside. So, I've managed to pick up my glove now, because I wiggled my fingers at the cuff to pick it up. I can touch only the cuff bit to the cuff if I want to, okay? But what I'm going to do now is put my non-dominant hand inside of this glove, and I'm going to now hook my fingers and pull the glove up. Okay? To be safe, I'm probably not going to pinch with my thumb at all. If you absolutely have to, remember cuff to cuff. And you're letting go, okay? Don't fiddle with that hand. Sometimes you'll mess up and you'll just half get your fingers in. Don't fiddle with it too much once you've got this glove on. You can fiddle a little bit more once you've got both the gloves on. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to take the fingers, the sterile hand, the fingers of my sterile hand only are going to go underneath the glove at this point. Now this hand I absolutely am not allowed to pinch with my thumb because we would be touching sterile to semi-sterile. I'm going to take the cuff, I'm going to pull just with the fingers of my hand up to my wrist, cover my wrist. Now you'll see I've got this funny thumb situation going on. This is where I'm completely sterile with my hands, so I can touch my thumb and sort myself out, okay? Now one thing I don't want to see you doing is really at this point touching anything beyond the wrist towards your arms, okay? Because that, even if you're not breaking sterility, it still looks an awful lot like you are to the examiner. So just don't fiddle with that area, okay? It's too close to your uncovered arm. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my prayer position, keep my hands away from my body and wait until I'm asked, have you finished your task? Something you'll notice that I've done throughout is I've kept my arms a good distance from my body at all times, just to avoid the risk of touching my body with my sterile gloves. So I will ask the examiner, I will say to the examiner now, I've completed my task and I'm done.